Hey everyone, welcome back. I'm betting you're all as curious as I am about what's going to happen with grocery prices now that the election is over and Trump is in office. Yeah, it's like it's like, will those grocery bills actually shrink like he talked about on the campaign trail? Well, we're going to deep dive into all of that today. We've got this Reddit thread from Arflin in Finance. Pretty lively debate going on there, lots of different opinions. And then we also have this interesting article from NBC News that really digs into some of Trump's statements. And let me just tell you, there are some surprising contradictions popping up here. So,
Absolutely.
yeah, we're really getting into this just as Trump takes office, which makes it even more timely, right? So, will those grocery prices really come down? What factors are actually at play here? And what does this all mean for you, the listener? Trying to figure out how to budget, what to expect when you head to the store. So yeah, that's what we're deep diving into today.
It's definitely a hot topic, especially since grocery prices have been such a concern for so many people. And you're right, there is this real tension between what Trump said on the campaign trail and what he's saying now. He really hammered that message of lowering grocery prices as a core promise.
Yeah.
And now he's quoted in this NBC News article saying it's hard to bring things down once they're up.
Yeah, it's like almost a little bit of a backpedal, isn't it?
You could say that.
Yeah.
And what's even more interesting is he's not really giving us a lot of concrete details on how he plans to tackle this.
Right. It's kind of like, okay, so he mentions increasing American energy production, but we're already producing a ton of energy, right?
Yeah, exactly. We're at record levels.
And then he talks about fixing supply chains, which sure sounds good in theory, but how?
That's the missing piece, right?
Totally. It's like we need the specifics.
And we also can't ignore his history with tariffs, When he imposed those tariffs back in 2018, things go kind of messy.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Container shipping rates went crazy high, like over 70% higher.
That's insane.
Yeah, it was a real shock to the system.
But didn't that hurt consumers in the end?
It definitely had the potential to, yeah. This NBC article actually quotes a shipping analyst, Peter Sand, who basically says that those tariffs could end up costing consumers more than they help.
Which seems kind of counterintuitive, doesn't it?
It can be, but that's the tricky thing about tariffs. They can really disrupt that whole delicate balance of global trade. And when that happens, businesses end up facing higher costs. And guess who ends up paying for that?
Shoppers, us.
Exactly. You hit the nail on the head.
Yeah. So let's talk about those grocery prices specifically, since that's what everyone is worried about. I mean,
Yeah.
the NBC article mentions that food prices have gone up by a whopping 23% since the pandemic started. That's huge.
It is significant, yeah. No wonder everyone's feeling the pinch. And you see that reflected in the Reddit thread, too. A lot of people are really feeling it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Lots of people sharing their personal experiences, talking about how much more they're spending at the grocery store.
It's a real concern. But there's also something else to consider here. While those price increases have been steep, the rate of increase has actually slowed down lately.
Okay, so there's a little bit of good news there.
It seems so, yeah. It's now less than 2%, which is a far cry from those double-digit increases we were seeing earlier.
So is this slowdown all thanks to Trump? Or is there something else going on?
Well, it's probably a mix of things, right? Lower gas prices are definitely playing a role. Those have come down to around $3 a gallon.
Which is a relief, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And agricultural import prices had become more stable as well. Plus, those container shipping costs, although they can be volatile, they have come down from their peak last summer.
So it's not as simple as saying, president takes office, prices magically drop.
You're absolutely right. It's not a direct cause and effect situation. It's much more nuanced.
I guess it's a good reminder that the economy is super complex, right?
Absolutely. There are so many moving parts. It's like a giant puzzle.
And sometimes those pieces can shift in unexpected ways.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like take egg prices, for example. They've actually spiked recently because of the avian flu outbreak, something that's totally outside of any president's control.
Yeah, I've noticed that at the store.
It just shows how volatile food prices can be and how much is influenced by factors beyond government policies.
So, if you're listening right now, think about your own grocery list. Have you noticed any price changes lately? Are there certain items that have become more expensive while others have stayed relatively stable?
It's a great question to consider. How are these broader trends playing out in your own shopping experience?
Because it's not just about the overall numbers, it's about what's actually happening on those shelves when you go to the store.
Exactly.
And it's about how those prices impact your budget and your ability to put food on the table.
Absolutely.
And, there's another policy area that we need to talk about that could have a big impact on what you see in those grocery aisles.
Oh, right. Immigration.
Exactly.
Trump's stance on deportations has some farmers pretty worried.
Yeah, and for good reason. The NBC article highlights a California farmer, Joe Del Bosque, who's really concerned about potential labor shortages. He basically says that if there are fewer workers, it could lead to both higher prices and less availability of those fruits and veggies that we all depend on.
Which would be a pretty big deal for consumers, wouldn't it?
It would, yeah. Imagine heading to the store and seeing empty shelves or seeing price tags that are just way too high. It's a scary thought.
Yeah, it definitely highlights the potential consequences of these policies.
So let's switch gears for a minute and head over to that Reddit thread we mentioned earlier.
All right, let's see what people are saying.
It's a real mix of opinions, let me tell you. Some people are totally on board with Trump's plans. They think he can absolutely turn things around.
They're optimistic, huh?
Yeah, they really believe he can deliver on his promises. But then you have others who are super skeptical. They're pointing to his past actions and questioning whether a president really has that much control over market forces.
Yeah, it's that classic debate, right? How much can the government actually do to influence the economy?
Exactly. And it's a question that's relevant to all of us. Do you think a president can single-handedly control grocery prices? That's something we're going to unpack further in the next part of our deep dive. But for now, just think about it. Where do you stand on that question? It's a big one, for sure.
It is, and it's one that gets to the heart of how we think about the role of government in our lives. So yeah, keep that question in mind as we continue our exploration.
We'll be right back after a quick break.
Yeah, it really makes you think, doesn't it? Can any president really have that much control over something as complicated as grocery prices?
I mean, there's no magic wand, right?
Not exactly. No, it's not that simple.
Right, so it's not like they can just snap their fingers and suddenly everything's cheaper.
Definitely not. It's more like a giant web. Everything's connected. You pull on one string, and it affects everything else.
So how do we even start to untangle this? Where do we even begin?
Well, I think it helps to zoom out a little bit, look at the bigger picture.
Okay, so what's the big picture here?
Well, on one side, you've got all these government policies, things like trade deals, tariffs, agricultural subsidies, even immigration laws. All of these things play a role in determining how much it actually costs for farmers and food companies to produce what ends up on our plates.
So the government has a pretty big hand in all of this.
They do, yeah. Their policies can definitely influence things.
But it's not just the government, right? I mean, you've got the companies themselves. They're trying to make a profit.
Of course they are.
They're not going to sell stuff at a loss. That's just not how businesses work.
Exactly. And those companies, they set their prices based on all sorts of factors. Their own costs, the competition, what consumers are willing to pay.
So it's this constant push and pull, right, between what the government's doing, what the companies are doing, and what we as consumers need and can afford.
That's a great way to put it, yeah. It's this delicate balance.
Wait, there's more, right?
Oh, yeah.
It's not just what's happening here in the U.S., it's the whole world, right?
Absolutely. Global events have a huge impact on prices.
Like, what kind of global events are we talking about?
Well, there's a lot going on right now. Geopolitical instability, for one thing. You've got conflicts and tensions in different parts of the world.
Yeah, that's always a factor.
And then there's climate change, which is really starting to mess with crop yields, droughts, floods, unpredictable weather patterns. All of that affects how much food is actually produced.
Right, so less food means higher prices.
Exactly. And then we've still got those lingering supply chain disruptions from the pandemic.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Ports getting backed up, shipping delays, all that stuff.
It's like a ripple effect, right? All these things happening around the world, and it all comes back to those prices we see at the grocery store.
Exactly. It's this interconnected system. We're all part of it.
So with all these moving pieces, how can a president even manage all of this? Like, how much control do they really have?
That's the big question, isn't it? There's no easy answer. They can try to influence things through policy, of course, like negotiating trade deals to lower the cost of imported food, or providing subsidies to farmers to help them cover their production costs.
So the government can step in and try to make adjustments.
They can, but even those actions can have unintended consequences.
Right, like that tariff example we talked about earlier.
Exactly. A tariff might protect some jobs here in the U.S., but it could also make imported food more expensive. So it's always a trade-off. You have to weigh the costs and benefits.
It's complicated stuff.
It is, yeah. And then you got things like natural disasters, pandemics. Those are wild cards.
Totally unpredictable.
No president can really prepare for those or control them.
So it kind of brings me back to those Reddit comments. It seems like some people believe that the president has this magical power to fix the economy.
I get that. I think it's human nature, right?
Yeah.
We want things to be simple. We want easy solutions to these big problems.
Yeah, we want someone to come in and just fix it all.
But the reality is, it's just not that easy. These are complex issues, there are no quick fixes, and it's important to acknowledge that, to recognize the limits of what any one person, even the president, can actually do.
So, where does that leave us, the shoppers? It kind of feels like we're stuck in this web of global forces and policies just along for the ride.
I understand that feeling. Yeah, it can be overwhelming.
Yeah.
But I actually think there's a lot we can do as consumers.
Really? So we're not just helpless bystanders?
Not at all. We have more power than we realize.
Okay, I'm curious. Tell me more.
Well, think about it. Every time you go to the grocery store, you're making choices. Every item you put in your cart, it's like a vote for the kind of food system you want to support.
So, like, if I buy organic, I'm voting for more sustainable farming practices.
That's one way to think about it,
And
yeah.
if I go to the farmer's market, I'm supporting local businesses.
Exactly. You're putting your money where your values are.
Wow, I never thought of it that way.
And imagine those choices multiplied across millions of shoppers.
That's a lot of votes.
It is. And those votes send a powerful message to the producers, the retailers, the whole industry. They pay attention to what we're buying, trust me.
So we're not just stuck accepting whatever price they throw at us.
No, not at all. We can actually shape the market through our choices.
Okay, I like that. Power to the shoppers.
Exactly. And it goes beyond what you buy. It also matters where you shop. Choosing stores that prioritize things like ethical sourcing, fair labor practices, environmental sustainability, that can influence the entire industry as well.
So it's like voting with your wallet, but on a bigger
I
scale.
like that analogy.
And remember those voices we were talking about earlier?
Yeah,
Yours matters too.
it does.
Speaking up about what's important to you, whether it's fair prices, ethical sourcing, environmental concerns.
Yeah, using your voice is crucial.
Because it raises awareness, it helps shift the conversation.
Exactly. And knowledge is power. The more we understand about how this whole system works, the better equipped we are to navigate it and make choices that align with our values.
So, contacting your elected officials, sharing your thoughts online, even just talking to friends and family about these issues,
It all matters.
it all adds up.
It really does.
Wow, this whole deep dive has been so eye-opening. I'm looking at my grocery list in a whole new light now.
That's great to hear.
Here.
As we wrap up, I want to leave you with this thought. What role do you want to play in shaping the future of food?
It's a good question, something to really think about.
It is. It's a question we all need to ask ourselves.
It's been amazing unpacking all of this with you. We've gone from Trump's campaign promises to the complexities of the global economy, and now we're talking about the power we have as consumers.
It's been a fascinating journey.
It has. So, stay curious, stay engaged, and keep asking those tough questions. Until next time, everyone, happy shopping. It's easy to feel kind of powerless when you think about how big and complicated all this is. Like, what can one person really do to change things?
Yeah, I can see how you might feel that way. But honestly, we actually have a lot of power as consumers.
Really, more than we realize.
Absolutely. Think about it. Every time you go to the store and buy something, you're making a choice.
Oh.
You're supporting a certain company, a certain way of producing food.
So, like, if I buy organic...
You're voting for sustainable farming practices.
Right. And if I buy from local farmers...
You're supporting small businesses, local economies.
Wow, I never thought of it like that. It's like every purchase is a vote.
Exactly. And when you multiply those votes by millions of shoppers...
That's a lot of power.
It is. It sends a clear message to the food industry. They're watching what we buy, believe me.
So it's not just about accepting whatever price they give us.
No, we have a say. We can shape the market with our choices.
Okay, that's empowering.
It is. And it's not just about what you buy, it's also about where you buy it.
Right, like choosing stores that align with your values.
Exactly. Stores that prioritize ethical sourcing, fair labor practices, sustainability.
So we can really make a difference.
We can. And don't forget about your voice.
Right, speaking up.
That's powerful too.
Whether it's about fair prices, or ethical sourcing, or the environment.
It all matters.
So contacting our representatives, talking to friends and family,
Sharing your thoughts online.
raising awareness.
Exactly.
It all adds up.
It does. Knowledge is power. The more we know about the food system, the better choices we can make.
This whole conversation has really changed my perspective.
That's great to hear. I'm glad. As we wrap up, I want to leave you with the thought. What role do you want to play in shaping the future of food?
That's a good question.
It is. It's a question we all need to ask ourselves.
Well, it's been fantastic talking about all of this with you. We've covered a lot of ground.
We have, from Trump's promises to global economics to the power of the consumer.
I feel like I learned a lot.
Me too.
So to all our listeners out there, stay curious, stay engaged, and keep asking those tough questions. Until next time, happy shopping, everyone.